their chance to express those disagreements, and very few topics kind of provoke such a maybe passionate reaction as the question of abortion. Perhaps you are a pro-choice person. Perhaps you are personally opposed to abortion, but you believe that it should be legal. Well, we dedicate the entire program today to the question, why are you pro-choice? 888-318-7884 is the number. That's 888-318-7884. Catholic Answers apologist Trent Horn will be taking your questions and comments today. Trent is a convert to Catholicism and the author of several books, two of which are of particular interest to our topic today. Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issue, and also one of the books in the 20 Answers series, 20 Answers about Abortion. Catholic Answers has a extensive 20 Answers series. Hi, Trent.
Hello.
How are things where you are today? Feeling well?
I am feeling well, actually. So I'm broadcasting here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a nice little overcast day. These are the days here in Phoenix when people say, people will ask, why doesn't everybody live here? And I tell them, well, you'll find out in 4 months. So
all of a sudden it'll dawn on you.
It will, yes. Well, I mean, it does creep up gradually, kind of like the frog in the pot that boils. And I don't know if it gets close to boiling around here sometimes. It gets close enough. But otherwise, things are very good, and I'm very happy to be on the show today and to talk to people who might disagree on the issue of abortion and identify as being pro-choice. I think those are some great conversations to have.
They are indeed. 888-31-TRUTH is the number. We have a new nominee for the Supreme Court. There was an article about him this morning in the New York Times, and I wanted to throw this by you. He has made the legal argument that if you accept Roe v. Wade, then you must reject suicide and euthanasia. And does that strike you as an odd argument? But his point being, well, the court said that the rights of a person don't accrue to the unborn child. And if you say that, then you say, then they must accrue to everyone who's born. So that would eliminate the possibility of assisted suicide and euthanasia. I don't think that he's saying, I wasn't quite sure, but I don't think he's saying that he does agree with Roe v. Wade, but he's saying if you do, you have to reject these other innovations.
Yeah, I think I would agree with your assessment that he's talking about what would logically or legally entail from a court's particular ruling, and that's the role of justices to say, well, if there's a ruling A or B, what is the logical consequence of this when a case that may be unrelated in many factors but have a string of relation comes along? They'll say, well, it follows from this previous case here and there. I would say, actually, this is not that far-fetched, and I'd have to read his exact words to see what he meant by this. But I do know that the Supreme Court, I believe it was in 1997, struck down the idea that people have a constitutional right to assisted suicide. That was the Washington versus Glucksberg case, which was decided 9-0, actually, which is, I don't know too many unanimous Supreme Court decisions like that. And so it didn't outlaw assisted suicide, obviously, because we have that in California, Oregon, and Washington, but it struck down the idea that people have a constitutional right or that states cannot ban assisted suicide or euthanasia. And this is a court, obviously, that had many people on it that were firmly in favor of Roe versus Wade, at least half the court. So that may be one thing that entails from that. That ultimately, if you do argue right to life as being inviolable only for born people, then that would take away euthanasia or assisted suicide. However, if you argue abortion from bodily rights, that I can do whatever I want with my body, then it kind of seems that assisted suicide or euthanasia follows, though I do believe that very powerful arguments can be made on all of those fronts, that with assisted suicide and euthanasia, you obviously have to take a different perspective. This is not about someone, except in some cases of euthanasia, whose life is ended against their will, like the unborn child has no say whatsoever. People will say, I get you that the baby didn't have a choice in this, but what if somebody chooses to end their own life? Why can't we help them? And that's where we have to bring forth arguments that show that the right to life is inalienable, something we can't even give away ourselves. We recognize this. I mean, you live in San Diego. They shut down the Coronado Bay Bridge and always have to talk people down or forcefully pull them down who want to end their own life, that we understand in many cases, no, we don't let people end their own life, that we say, no, you should not do this. We have a responsibility to help you not do this. And what makes assisted suicide wrong is that we say, well, unless you're disabled or you're very sick or you're elderly, then it's okay. Your life is not worth living. And that's not an attitude we should have. All human life should be treated as having the same equal dignity and intrinsic right to live.
And I think, in your experience, would you say that it's also the case that even though you don't necessarily say that, as a matter of fact, Judge Gorsuch is saying you can't logically say I accept the Roe versus Wade decision and that leads to suicide or euthanasia. It's not necessarily a matter of logic that once there's an erosion in one area of the respect for human life, there's a tendency for the whole thing to kind of erode.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the problem comes when we say, well, what matters? Human lives matter because of how they function or because of how capable they are of interacting with other human lives. When we value quality of life over a right to life or intrinsic human value and dignity, then it becomes much easier for other rights and other lives that are in danger to be placed in jeopardy and to have their liberties eroded in this way. So that's why we've seen in countries where people say, take abortion or assisted suicide and euthanasia. It always starts, well, it's only for these hard cases.
Yeah.
It's only for the case of rape or life of the mother, or it's only for someone who only has, a few months left to live and has a terminal painful illness. What we see in Europe, which actually their abortion laws in most of Europe are not as liberal as the United States, but euthanasia and assisted suicide, it starts with the hard cases, and then you have children who can be euthanized because they have clinical depression. So the slippery slope is quite real. In many cases, it's not a fallacy, and it's worth pointing out.
Amen to that, brother. 888-31-TRUTH is the number, 888-318-7884. And we go to Gene in Cleveland, Ohio, listening on 1260 AM. Gene, our topic today, why are you pro-life? And Trent Horn is taking your questions. Gene, what did you have to say about why you are pro-life?
You mean pro-choice?
Pro-choice. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much, Trent. Gene?
Yes.
Why are you pro-choice?
I don't think it's anybody's business but the person that's going through with themselves, the doctor, their family if they have one, and God. They pray over it and they make a decision with their doctor about what's best for them to do. I don't think anybody has a right to tell them what to do or make a law about what they do with their bodies.
Okay, Gene, you said it only involves the woman, her doctor, and God. Before we have to go to a break, I have one quick question. Should the father have any say because the baby is his son or daughter?
If he happens to have a family, now if she has a boyfriend, maybe he can talk it over with him. Maybe that might help her make a decision too. Who knows?
Well, Gene,
it's not anybody else's decision.
Gene, if let's say the boyfriend says, "Please don't kill my baby," who should people side with? The boyfriend who says, "Don't kill my baby," or the woman who says she has the right to end the baby's life? Who do you side with?
That can be discussed. That can be worked out. They can work that out between the two of them, but that has nothing to do with making a law about it.
Okay, so you would agree, though, Gene, that so in this case, they can just talk about it. If it's a baby before it's born, it's up to them to make that decision. Let's say the baby's been born and the mom says, I'm done with this baby, and in fact, I'm going to go and just throw them in the canal behind the house. I'm done with all of this. Should she be able to kill the baby after it's born?
I don't believe anybody should kill anybody's baby before or afterwards in certain degrees. Okay?
Before, no one should kill a baby before what?
Wait a minute. My problem is that I don't think that anybody has the right to tell that person what to do with their body. Point
Why not?
blank. That's the body part. Now, as far as you deciding what to do with the baby before or afterwards, that depends upon what's going on with her body. With her,
Why?
her doctor, she can pray over it or whatever. That she has a boyfriend or a husband or something, they discuss that, well, we don't want to do this or we want to do that. They make that decision together. If they both decide no, if they both decide yes, fine, whatever, but it has nothing to do with somebody up in Congress or somewhere else or some government telling them what to do. You can't have an abortion, you can't do this or do that.
So you don't think anyone else, Gene, you think no one else has any interest or any business saying to a couple, you can't hurt your baby? Who's going to look out for the baby if the parents aren't looking out for him or her?
Usually they make decisions based on what's available for help for that family.
So you think it's okay to kill a baby if
they happen to have a child, which I know a lot of this happens. I worked in the government, I worked in civil service and all that stuff, and I know how they work. If they decide they don't want to have a child, they have agencies that want to help take care of these kids and help them get through the pregnancies and all that kind of junk. And then they can go down there and they can declare that the child, they don't want them, and they'll take them or whatever. They can leave them
but they can't. But Gene, in that case with a born baby, they can't kill the baby, right?
Nobody said that they should kill them. I never said that.
But if you're saying that it's okay for them to have an abortion, that's the same thing as saying it's okay to kill the baby before it's born.
Abortions are necessary in some cases because some people have certain issues that have to be resolved between them, their doctor, and their family. Now,
So
their family could be a girl and her boyfriend. It could be her and her husband. It could be between just, nobody's there but just her. Maybe she has a doctor or somebody that's there she can talk to. Okay? I don't think it's the church's decision. I don't think it has anything to do with the government. I think it's a personal decision.
To end the baby's life, just if parents see, Gene, I don't understand your position because you're saying it's nobody's business to tell them what to do. They can kill their baby before it's born, none of your business. But if they kill the baby after it's born, they can be arrested. So for me, what's the difference with the baby? Isn't it the same baby before and after birth? What's the difference?
Well, because one thing, the baby that's not born yet is not considered a baby in my world until after the baby starts being able to breathe and being independent, or they're having blood going through their lungs and they're actually doing some kind of receiving and exchanging of bodily fluids in the body. That's my perception.
So,
Okay?
Gene, you're saying it's not a baby until it's born?
But if it's not functioning in the body, some kind of amoeba sitting up there multiplying and dividing, or sitting up there, some kind of cell organizing, dividing, and all that stuff, to me, it's not considered a baby.
Gene and Trent, I'm sorry I got to interrupt you because we got to take a quick break. It's a fascinating point Gene's making. I know Trent is ready to give an answer, but we have to take a break on Catholic Answers Live. 888-31-TRUTH is the number. The question today, why are you pro-choice? And we will be right back.
Don't you just love listening to Trent Horn? Did you know you can book Trent or any of our other great speakers to speak at your parish or special event? Contact one of our seminar coordinators through the Speakers Bureau section on Catholic.com today to find out more information.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm challenging you to take the 20 Answers Challenge. Catholic Answers 20 Answers series offers hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world. Here's how the challenge works. When you purchase the sampler of all 20 books in the series, we're going to knock the price in half. And we're challenging you to finish them all this Lent and Easter season. Then, we're going to take $10 from each set purchased and provide materials to our friends at St. Paul Street Evangelization so they can do what they do best, hit the streets and share the Catholic faith. That's $10 from every set you purchase, going to help our fellow workers in the vineyard. You win, St. Paul Street Evangelization wins, the Catholic Church wins. That's a win-win-win. Together, we can be part of something great. Call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com to get your set and begin taking the 20 Answers Challenge today.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In Mark 6:53, as soon as Jesus and his disciples landed at Gennesaret and left the boat, people began to bring the sick to him on mats. Whatever villages he entered, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged that they might only touch the tassel of his cloak. The combination of faith and humility always brought miracles, and it still does. In a culture of cynicism and arrogance, such virtues are so often nowhere to be found until we hurt. On September 11, 2001, concerns over the separation of church and state and political correctness were not in evidence on the streets of New York City. when religious pictures and vigil lights lined so many sidewalks. For a time, America was humbled and began to walk with the Lord. We've drifted again. It's time for America to once again embrace the cross. As always, it remains our only hope. I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you pro-choice? That is our topic today. Why are you pro-choice? Maybe you've decided that it's not up to you to interfere in these decisions. Maybe you've decided you don't think that your personal choices should be enshrined in law. There are all kinds of and shapes of pro-choice view. We welcome all of them today on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that we will be respectful and even, God willing, charitable in our responses. But we do welcome disagreeing calls today. Why are you pro-choice? 888-318-7884 is the number. Trent Horn, apologist here at Catholic Answers and author of Persuasive Pro-Life, is taking your calls. We left with Jean's question, essentially her assertion, I suppose is the way to say it, Trent, her assertion that there is no baby before the moment of birth.
Well, the term baby is an emotion is an emotional term. Now, I was using the term in the conversation because that's what was the currency of exchange. We're talking about babies, and I wanted to get into more, well, what do you mean by that? I think it's interesting. People say, well, it's not a baby. Well, what does that mean? Since baby is an emotional term, I would agree with you. An unborn child is not sucking on a pacifier, sitting in a crib or a bassinet you're holding in your arms and changing their diapers. These are things you associate with babies, infants, I should say. But it doesn't follow from that the unborn child is not a human being just because they are not an infant. Yes, they are not a baby in the sense they are not an infant, but the term baby can be used emotionally for anyone. Many of us, even as adults, will still be called our mother's baby. And you could say that an embryo or a fetus is a baby. They're not at the infant stage of life, but they're a very, very young human being. And so I think our conversation, and unfortunately we'll have to move on, really got to the root of the issue, which is I don't think it's anybody else's business what you do. Well, obviously we agree it is other people's business if they're harming a born baby. The question is it a baby before birth? And clearly it is. It's not, as our caller said, an amoeba simply dividing. You have living, growing tissue that has human DNA and human parents that is organized into an organism, a very small human being that just needs the same things you and I need in order to continue living, which is nutrients, the right environment, and time. And abortion deprives them of these things, just as many other fatal things would do that for born people. And that is essentially why abortion is wrong. That there are serious life problems people confront. I don't disagree with that. But we as a culture agree that we shouldn't solve serious life problems by committing acts of violence against innocent people. That's a barbaric way to solve difficult life problems. And so people may disagree with that, but we can definitely keep having the conversation.
Isn't that a little bit of a case of false precision too, to say, well, that's not a baby, that's a fetus or something? Well, you're being overly precise in the use of language.
It's a category error to say you'd have to define what a baby is. That's why I really do prefer to say, is what is in the womb a human being?
Right.
Is it a member of the human species, a human person, regardless of age or our emotional values to that individual? That when we start saying some lives matter because of how we feel about those lives, we are on a dangerous, dangerous path that people have gone down many times in history. And whenever people look back on that path, they always react with cringe and horror. And they say, how could someone have thought of that? Well, they're thinking of it right now.
888-318-7884 is the number for Catholic Answers Live today. Why are you pro-choice is our topic. We go to Nicole in Delaware listening on Sirius Satellite Radio. Nicole, your question or comment for Trent Horn.
Yes, hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Hi.
Wonderful. I am an Episcopalian, and I am pro-choice. If I'm at a point in my life where I'm 35 years old, and a baby would be an absolute blessing for me and my husband. In my early 20s, I don't know what my choice would have been, but as a woman, I want that choice to be there. I guess my question for you is, I know what the Catholic Church's stance on abortion is. When it comes to the fact of rape, incest, or a baby that is clearly having extremely severe birth defects where that child would suffer upon birth, what would be the stance on that? I know for me that I would want the right to spare my child from pain and make the choice that would be appropriate for me and my husband. But I guess, that would be my comment for you guys.
Sure. Nicole, I sympathize with, as a parent, the desire to wanting to keep a child from suffering. If my own child were stricken with a disease or had been harmed from someone, it just really rips into your soul as a parent. One of the worst things you can imagine is seeing your child suffer. So I do empathize that's so difficult, and you'd want to do anything to prevent that. But there are some things that I would not do. For example, if my child was dying or had in an accident or had a disease, and they were in the process of dying, to spare them from suffering, I would not kill them. I would not have a doctor just simply inject my child with morphine, for example, to overdose them. That might be something we do with animals because we don't value animals as much as we value human beings. With born human beings, at least, we say, well, if you are in a difficult position, whether you have a disability or an illness and you're in the process of dying, or let's say, for example, a born person who is conceived in rape or incest, we would never say, oh, I see you in front of me, your parents, you came from rape or incest, so you're not as valuable as me. We would never say that someone's functional ability, whether they're sick or healthy, or whether their parents loved each other or came from an act of violence, doesn't change their value. And so what the Catholic Church would say, well, what I think actually anyone who believes in the intrinsic dignity of human beings is that all human beings deserve the right to life regardless of their circumstances, even if they are very sick or are the product of a pregnancy that resulted from rape. And that's why the Church opposes abortion in those cases as well. Now, Nicole, I will ask you a question. Do you support abortion in general, like for any reason, or just more in those cases?
Well, it's like I said, I don't approve of abortion as a form of birth control. I don't approve of a woman who has other choices out there to simply get pregnant and then choose abortion because they just feel like it, because that's what's convenient for them. However,
Nicole,
I do believe, and again,
okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I don't know what the choice would be for me, but I think the bottom line is that I feel that I have the right to make that choice for myself.
Well, I'd like you to hang on, Nicole. We have to go to a break, but I would like you to hang on because I have a very important question I'd like to ask you about what you just brought up. So do hang on the line, and we will continue right after these messages.
More questions or more answers to the question, why are you pro-choice? When we come back on Catholic Answers Live, I am Cy Kellett, your host. The number, 888-31-TRUTH. We'll be right back.
Catholic Answers Live.
Hey everyone, this is Carlo Broussard. I've got a challenge for you. It's called the 20 Answers Challenge. Catholic Answers 20 Answers series offers hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the church and the world. Here's how the challenge works. When you purchase the sampler of all 20 books in the series, we're going to knock the price in half. And we're challenging you to finish them all this Lent and Easter season. Then, we're going to take $10 from each set purchased and provide materials to our friends at St. Paul Street Evangelization so they can do what they do best, hit the streets and share the Catholic faith. That's $10 from every set you purchase, going to help our fellow workers in the vineyard. You win, St. Paul Street Evangelization wins, the Catholic Church wins. That's a win-win-win. Together, we can be a part of something great. Call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com now to get your set and begin taking the 20 Answers Challenge today.
What are miracles, and why does God work them? How can I believe in miracles if I've never experienced one? Aren't miracles just something pre-scientific people made up to explain what they couldn't understand? 20 Answers Miracles unpacks the nature of miracles, their appearances in Scripture and history, how the Church evaluates them, and ways to answer doubters who say they're mere superstition. 20 Answers Miracles is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com today and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our topic this hour, why are you pro-choice? 888-31-TRUTH is the number, 888-318-7884. And we mentioned at the top of the hour that one of the books that Trent has written is one of the 20 Answers books, 20 Answers on Abortion. And this is, I'm going to read this, Trent. I haven't read it yet because I'm going to be taking the 20 Answers challenge myself for the month of February. When you purchase the sampler of all 20 Answers books, then they're taken off half price. So you're getting the whole thing for half price. And then they're challenging all those of us who have them, I've got them already, to get them all read by June 4th, the last day of the Easter season. So I'm going to read all 20 books by June 4th and share a little bit about that on social media. And we hope other people will as well. But the other cool thing about it is when you buy the set for half price, $10 from each purchase goes to St. Paul Street Evangelization so they can do what they do best, which is hit the streets and share the Catholic faith. If you want to join in on the 20 Answers Challenge, get all 20 Answers books from Catholic Answers at half price with $10 going to Street Evangelization. Visit Catholic.com and shop there or call 888-291-8000 to order your full set of 20 Answers books at half price. Or you were still speaking with Nicole, Trent. Is that right?
That's right. I was hoping to tie up our conversation. Nicole,
Okay.
are you still with us?
Yep.
Okay, great. I thought it was interesting when you said you don't approve of abortion if it's used as birth control, but in these very serious cases, you could understand how someone would need that choice. Why don't you approve of abortion as a form of birth control versus, maybe another kind of birth control? What is it about abortion for birth control you don't approve of?
Because I don't believe that. I understand that some people within the Catholic Church that your position on birth control is that it is equivalent to abortion. However, with a lot of forms of birth control. Go ahead.
Well, they're both wrong, but for different reasons. What do you believe birth control is okay? What is your position on that?
I do. I do believe that birth control is okay. I've used multiple forms of birth control because my husband and I mean, before I was married, I waited a very long time to lose my virginity. I'm not afraid to. I was 24 years old. I was in a serious relationship. So I was very conscientious of that. It wasn't something that I just, gave away. But I was also conscientious of the fact that I was at an age where I could not support a child and take care of that child properly. So I made the choice for myself to use birth control. And my husband and I used it throughout the beginning of our marriage because we were not financially stable to have a child at that point in our decision either. And the Episcopal Church, supports that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to nail that down because I'm trying to figure out why. So you are okay with some forms of birth control, like condoms or birth control pills, but you're not okay with abortion being used for birth control. Why?
I'm not, because I believe that if you're on the pill or you're using condoms, there is not a fetus. If you're taking the pill, you are not conceiving a child. When you have conceived a child and then using abortion to extract that child, then that's a line that I'm not willing to cross.
So what does abortion do to that child that's conceived? It doesn't just remove them. What does it do to the child?
No, but I will say it, and I will let you hear what you'd like to hear, is that the child is killed. Or in some cases, you would even say that the child is murdered.
Nicole, I don't want to hear that. I'm just trying to figure out what it is we are talking about in very crystal clear terms.
Sure, and I will agree that when a woman has an abortion, that the child is killed. It is what it is. I mean, it's very crystal clear that that's what happens.
Then let me understand your position in the conversation we've had so far, because I want to, maybe I'm not understanding something, you can help me out here, is that abortion is the killing of a child, but it's okay to kill that child in certain circumstances. Is that your position?
Essentially, yes. I am saying that I don't know what my decision would be, but I do not. It's the same way that I don't feel. I'll give you an example, and it's a little bit off topic. I sat on the vestry at my church, and we had the decision to decide to approve a candidate to become a deacon. I personally felt that candidate had a lot on his plate already, but someone spoke up and told me that I do not have that right to step in the way of somebody else, that ultimately is between them and God. And ultimately, when it comes to birth control and when it comes to abortion, do I feel that I have the right to step between someone and God? No, I don't. So is that the choice that I would make? Not necessarily. But who am I to step in between someone else and the choice that they have the right to make?
Nicole, I heard this with a previous caller, and this is I have a hard time understanding this reason, even in the diaconate example you gave, that if somebody thinks God has told them to do something, then we can't intervene. Well, I forget the woman, maybe it was Andrea Yates, I can't remember, who thought that God told her to drown her 5 children in a bathtub. Now, what if I was there and I could have stopped that by calling the police, and I said, you know what? That's between her and God. I can't step in there. Do you think there'd be something wrong with my rationalization at that point?
I do.
What's wrong with it?
You would be there to stop her from killing her 5 children. However, you know what? Ultimately, it comes down to agreeing and disagreeing. But ultimately, it's the way that I feel. That I agree. And I'm not going to say that you're wrong for being pro-life and I'm wrong for being pro-choice. And we do have to find somewhere to meet in the middle.
I don't think you, Nicole, I don't think you agree with that. For example, let me ask you a personal advice question. Nicole, should I go out and get legal and political experience and make abortion illegal? Should I go and do that?
No.
Okay, so you're telling me I'm wrong, and you're telling me what I should or shouldn't do.
It's your decision whether you want to go out and do that or not. But I don't believe that it should be in the hands of our federal government to make a decision on what I can do with my body.
Okay, then would I then have the right to?
In circles.
No, we're not going around in circles. I think we're at what's called an impasse, where essentially each of us has 2 different value judgments, and a person has to decide what do they ultimately value in life. Now, my value judgment is that all human beings, no matter how old they are, or no matter where they live, or no matter how dependent they are on their mothers, have a right to live and to not be killed. That the question, a child is it okay to kill a child in circumstance X? I don't think there is no circumstance X for that. So that's my value judgment. Your value judgment is, well, it's wrong in many cases, but not in some cases, so I can't intervene. And I personally just go with the value that includes more human beings being protected rather than less. Is that sensible?
I would agree that that's sensible.
Okay, great. Well, then I think that's something to think over about our conversation, and I think ultimately we have to look at our core values about when it comes to human value. And just because someone is in the womb, or someone is dying, or someone is in a helpless position, I believe that justifies us intervening and helping them, even if there are people who disagree with us. So, Nicole, I do thank you for calling, and maybe we'll do the show again in another few months. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more. So thank you very much for being on with us.
Thank you very much, Nicole. If you are pro-choice, we would love you as a caller today. We're looking for pro-choice people to answer the basic question, why are you pro-choice? Addressing your concerns or comments or questions is Trent Horn, apologist here at Catholic Answers, and also the author of Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issue. We go now to Nicole. Am I right? In Delaware?
We bid Nicole farewell.
We said, okay. Sorry, I knew something was wrong about that, Trent. Let me give the number. 888-318-7884 is the number. We go to Adam in Bismarck, North Dakota. Adam, you are on with Trent Horn.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Adam. What's your question or comment for Trent Horn?
I just wanted to say that I'm pro-choice, and especially when you have to consider, or when you sometimes have to consider the life of the mother, when there are medical circumstances that may put the mother at risk.
What circumstances might those be, Adam, that you're thinking of?
Well, I don't know the details of the medical problems, but I know there was a case a few years ago in Ireland where abortion was illegal, and while giving birth, the doctors had to tell her husband that there were some complications, and that if the mother continued to give birth, that both her and the baby were going to die. Now, unfortunately, because abortion was illegal, they couldn't perform an abortion, and even though the husband pled with the doctors, they had to sit there and allow the mother and the child to die. Now, the child was going to die anyways, but if they performed an abortion, they could have saved the mother at least. But since it was illegal, they had to allow both individuals to die.
Okay. Well, Adam, I think the case you're referring to is the case of Dr. Savita Halappanavar. I think that's the case. I don't know, so I can't go into it in more detail. If that is the case, I'd recommend our listeners visit a great website, Savita Truth, S-A-V-I-T-A, savitatruth.com, because there's a lot of misinformation people have about that particular case. However, I'm willing to talk about the broader issue of what do we do when a pregnant woman is sick or there's a complication in pregnancy. What do we do in those cases when you have two lives and maybe you can only save one of them? What do you do in that case? So I would say we should not kill the mother in order to save the child, and we should not kill the child in order to save the mother. That a basic principle, if two lives are in jeopardy, we should try to save who we can, but that doesn't give us the right to kill somebody in order to save somebody else, even if both of them are going to die. Let me give you an example of this, a classic ethics example. You're in a lifeboat with another person, and the lifeboat is sinking. It could stay afloat if only one of you were inside the lifeboat. If you both stay in, you both die. Now, what if you said, well, if I kick this other guy out, I'll at least save my own life, and it's better to save one than lose two. But I would hope you would agree in that case, just because your life is in danger, it doesn't give you the right to kill somebody just to save your own life. Do you see what I'm at least saying in that lifeboat example about killing in order to save life? Okay.
The only problem with that is it's possible for both people to stay alive. What if it's guaranteed that one will die? And if that one dies, it will take the other person with them.
Well, in that example, I'm saying the two people in the boat are weighing it down, and so it can't stay afloat. It could only hold one. So in that case, if neither person kills the other, they both will die. And if I was in that position, I would hope that I would have the Holy Spirit to be courageous, to face death in an honorable, dignified way. If they're both moral, then they both will die because neither will kill the other to save themselves. So I would say that in pregnancy, there may be cases like that, but they're very, very extremely rare. When it comes to a pregnant woman's life being in danger, there's really two areas we have to look at. If it's near the end of pregnancy, then even after the second trimester, even after into the third trimester when we're getting later into pregnancy, what you can do if the mother is, there's some problem, just deliver the child early. Just do an emergency C-section. If you do that, then you can say, well, instead of aborting the child where you give them no chance at all, even if the child's very young, you could say, well, at least we're giving them a chance to survive rather than, both the mother and child will die. We'll just do an early delivery rather than a late abortion. The other case would be ectopic pregnancy. That's the most common case where an embryo implants in the fallopian tube and it grows. In that case, the child cannot be saved. The mother can be saved. And so in that case, the doctor can remove the damaged section of the fallopian tube and save the mother and indirectly end the child's life. This happens oftentimes in cases where you have two people in danger and you can't save both. You have to choose one. And in your choice, you indirectly cause the death of the other. An example I think people can appreciate would be on 9/11 when airplanes flew into the World Trade Center in New York. You have a choice. Either everyone in the plane is going to die either way, but if you shoot the plane down, then you can save the people in the building. You're not killing the people in the plane in order to save other people. It's an indirect result of the choice you're trying to make to save the people in the building. So there's a difference between directly killing to save life and intervening to save life where death is an indirect result. Do you see the distinction I'm making there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. Well, hopefully that would be helpful for you. I don't know if we have to go to another... we'll probably have to take a quick pause here, but do think that over. And in my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, I have a whole chapter on those hard cases, and I also quote doctors on the question of whether a woman's life is in danger who say that abortion is simply not necessary. We can manage those difficult cases in licit ways. A friend of the show, Father Tad Paholchek, has a great article. You can search for it online called When Pregnancy Goes Awry, A-W-R-Y, When Pregnancy Goes Awry by Father Tad. Goes into it in a lot of detail. So thank you very much for calling, though.
Why are you pro-choice? That's our topic today on Catholic Answers Live. 888-318-7884 is the number, and we'll be right back.
Why are you pro-choice? Call now. Trent is waiting to talk to you.
Today our faith is under attack like never before. Skeptics of all stripes are trying to undermine the very basis of our faith, the revelation that God has given us in Jesus Christ. Some critics argue that Jesus never even existed, and they've influenced tens of millions of people today. Others have argued that we shouldn't trust the canonical Gospels because there were dozens of other Gospels in the early church. And many more have claimed that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were all written long after the ministry of Christ, and that the evangelists felt free to simply invent stories and sayings of Jesus to suit their own goals. No wonder so many people today doubt their faith or have lost it altogether. The good news is that there are answers to each and every one of these charges. That's why Catholic Answers Studios has just released a new DVD by Jimmy Akin titled Why You Can Trust the Gospels. It's a powerful presentation in which Jimmy takes on the skeptics and refutes them point by point, revealing how evidence from non-Christian sources and even tiny details in the Gospels that you've never noticed all show how the Gospels are true and accurate records of what our Savior said and did. To make your donation and get a free copy of Jimmy Akin's new DVD, Why You Can Trust the Gospels, visit Catholic.com and click the Why You Can Trust the Gospels banner, or call us toll-free at 888-291-8000. That's the Why You Can Trust the Gospels banner at Catholic.com, or call toll-free 888-291-8000.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. 2 hours today on the topic, why are you pro-choice? If you are a pro-choice person, whether Catholic or non-Catholic, of any persuasion and for any reason, we'd love to take your call today. We very much welcome your call at 888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Answering your questions, comments, objections today is Trent Horn, apologist here at Catholic Answers. And we go to Rich in Illinois, listening on 88.1 FM. Rich, your comment for Trent Horn.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. I think as long as the society is what it is, that people have different addictions, drug addictions, alcohol, gambling, the drugs, that these children are not going to be taken care of. Our hearts are not towards God. He allowed people to come into power who put these laws into place. So this is the law of the land. If we just bull rush this law out, like we just toss it out as like unethical or whatever, what's going to happen with all of these children that are not going to be loved or cared for and neglected? And suddenly you've got people who've never had to take the responsibility of having a child, and you're going to take away the right to have an abortion. These people are going to be having children. I can't scenario than a child growing up that's not loved.
Oh, okay, Rich. First, if you have your radio on in the background, you might want to turn that down a bit. And let me see if I understand your position. You talked about how God put leaders in place, and they gave us these laws. Are you saying that God wanted it to be legal for abortion, or can the leaders God gives us, can they do something that's wrong, that God doesn't want?
Well, first of all, our hearts were wrong towards God, or we wouldn't have had these leaders put in the first place.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I would agree with you that all people sin, and so none of us perfectly lives according to God's law, and we need God's grace in order to be restored into relationship with Him. But I don't see how. But we're all sinners. But I don't see how it follows from that because we all need the grace of God. That because of that, when someone commits a heinous sin, like making it legal to end a child's life before they are born, we have to simply acquiesce to that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Rich, would you identify yourself as a Christian, or?
I would identify myself as a Christian. Okay,
then I would say that many scripture verses, I would hope they would point you in a different direction on this. First, Psalm 146:3 says, "Do not put your trust in human princes, in human beings who can't save." That many of our leaders do terrible things, and we have to call them out on it. In particular, Proverbs 24:11 tells us to rescue those who are being dragged to death. Proverbs 24:11 says, rescue those who are being dragged to death. So my question is, if someone is going to be killed, do we stop and say, well, are they going to have a good life or a bad life? If it's a born person, do we stop and ask if they're going to have a good life? Or do we just rescue them from being killed when it's a born person? What do we do in that case?
Well, sir, when people sin, they're going to be dragged to their death. And so when you talk about something like that, there's a spiritual death and there's a physical death. And if we can stop somebody from the physical death, by all means, we should do it.
Okay, well, we
should do it.
We have
what about the spiritual death? You see, these people are on their way to death anyway, until they turn their hearts back towards God.
Who are you talking? Are you Rich? Rich, are you talking about the people who are having abortions?
No, abortion is not necessarily the worst thing out there.
I'll agree with you. It's not necessarily the worst thing out there, but I would say ending the life of a small child has got to be up in the top 5. What would you say?
Well, I would say that the people having the abortions have got other problems other than just the abortion. You're looking at this from the abortion side, and I'm saying there's a big old battle that's already been lost.
Right, but how does it follow, Rich, that...
Nebuchadnezzar is a good example of what I'm talking about in the Bible. Daniel made it very clear that nobody comes to power on their own. We don't vote in our presidents. If we voted in someone God didn't want in power, he'd never take office. It's very clear. These things are, because of our hearts are towards destruction, God allows people to come into power that will lead us into destruction.
But does God give us the choice and the moral duty to oppose those leaders when they harm innocent people?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, sir. If I could help a woman who was pregnant with some finances or a place to stay or anything in that realm to help her in order to keep the kid, I would do it if she wanted that or needed that help. On the same hand, if there's a woman who wants to go and has made this decision to go in and get herself an abortion, I would defend her right. Having been in the military, this is the law of the land. People don't have a right until this is overturned.
So, Rich, 150 years ago, when it was legal to own a slave, and let's say it sounds like you have a charitable, compassionate heart that if we transported you back in time 150 years ago, you could either, if you wanted to, you would buy a slave and set them free. But if somebody wants to take their slave and they need your help to get the slave onto their plantation, you would help them because it's the law of the land. Would you have assisted slavery 150 years ago simply because it was the law of the land?
That's a rough question, buddy. It depends on who the person who was and wanted to help, and I would try to treat that person with as much dignity and respect as they were due as a fellow.
Are you talking about the slave, Rich?
Human being, the slave, absolutely.
Okay, well, I would say it's not a rough question, actually, that people who have a right to be free, and so we should help those who are enslaved, and we help those who are enslaved by making slavery illegal. And people have a right to live, and we can help unborn babies whose right to life is threatened by assisting their mothers, but also at a larger level, making it illegal to harm those babies. And just because God gave us leaders, leaders can sin, and we have to hold those leaders accountable because God will hold us accountable.
Thanks very much, Rich. Thank you, Trent. Another hour coming up on Why Are You Pro-Choice? If you are a pro-choice person, we welcome your call, 888-318-7884. And taking your calls the next hour, again, Trent Horn. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to the second hour of Catholic Answers Live. So happy to have you here with us. Our topic this hour, why are you pro-choice? Do you disagree with what the Catholic Church would say is the basic morality of that life is inviolable, that we cannot take the life of the unborn any more than we can take the life of the born? Do you have a disagreement on that count? Well, we'd love to take your call today. We're very happy to take your call. Why are you pro-choice? 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Trent Horn, apologist here at Catholic Answers, is taking your calls and questions today. He is the author of Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issue, and among the 20 Answers books that Catholic Answers produce, he wrote the one on abortion. So he is well prepared to take your calls. And I hope, Trent, both you and I will be charitable and respectful to all the callers. We're not looking for a fight. We're looking for a conversation, right?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, certainly discussions can be spirited, but I think that people can have spirited yet civil discussions on very important issues like these.
So you're welcome to be spirited. Call in with your, but you don't have to be spirited. 888-318-7884 is the number. We go now to George in Des Moines, Iowa, listening on 94.5 FM. George, you're on with Trent Horn. Why are you pro-choice?
Hi, Trent.
Hello.
Hello, thank you. We have leaders, we're a republic, and they're all different. None of them are the same, and someone may line up with our ideology on the surface, but we ultimately don't know what they're going to do in the future. And I'm just really curious for if you consider yourself a conservative Christian who's pro-life, is abortion the only thing that matters if we were to, vote in the next election? Like, what if we had a candidate who was absolutely, totally pro-life, but in other areas they were completely opposite of all of our other values?
Mm-hmm.
Should we vote for an establishment politician who is pro-choice, and yet they would preserve the stability of society? Or should we go for someone who wants to hit the gas pedal on dismantling abortion but what if it was for reasons that were not not what you might call holy? What if they were selfish reasons?
Oh, they're making abortion illegal out of political expediency, like to get votes?
No, I'm saying what if someone, what would a pro-life candidate have to do to outweigh the benefit of being pro-life?
That's a very clear question.
George,
George,
I think, George, I think that's a fair question. Before I continue, you talked about we. Do you identify as pro-life or do you identify as pro-choice?
I'm sorry, I'm pro-choice. But okay. I was interested in asking that one question about
the hypothetical we. Yeah. Sure. Okay, well, let me address that, then I have a question for you. When voting for candidates, I agree with you that abortion is not the only issue any more than child labor was not the only issue in 1920 or slavery was the only issue in 1860. Similar also in pre-1945 Germany. The Holocaust wasn't the only issue. There are certainly other issues that affect people, but there can be issues that are of the utmost importance or issues that do have priority over other issues that we have to consider. So I would say that, first, my political beliefs don't have a way into this, whether they're conservative or whatever they may be. I'm a Catholic first, and everything else comes after that. But I would say that as a Catholic who believes in upholding the teachings of the Church, when I go to vote, I vote in order to, my highest priority, make sure that the people in my country and also in the world, their intrinsic rights and intrinsic dignity are protected. So I'll want to vote for candidates who share that view. So in general, I would not vote for someone who thought that a certain group of human beings were not persons. So if there's a candidate who thought African Americans were not persons, they don't get my vote. If there's a candidate who thinks immigrants and refugees aren't persons, they don't get my vote. If there's a candidate who thinks unborn children are not persons, they don't get my vote. There may be cases, however, where, unfortunately, you get two pretty bad, crummy options. I think that in the past election cycle, for many people felt that seemed to go on interminably, that was a feeling many people had and have had about politics for a long time. You get, well, what do I do when two people just seem really bad? Well, I would just try to pick the lesser of two evils. So I would just look at both candidates and say, okay, there's things we can disagree on. Like we can disagree on what is the best way to alleviate poverty, whether it's through direct payments to the poor or by creating labor conditions where businesses can grow. People can have reasonable disagreement over things like that to alleviate poverty. You can't reasonably disagree over something like saying, well, the best way to alleviate poverty is to systematically kill the homeless. Well, there you can't have reasonable disagreement. So I would look at the two candidates. Let's say there's one who says they're pro-choice, another says they're pro-life. And I'd say, well, what intrinsic evils do they support? The pro-choice one supports the intrinsic evil of abortion. The pro-life one, I would say, what could they do to disqualify my vote? Well, if they also supported, let's say, preemptive nuclear war that threatened to kill millions or billions of innocent human beings without justification, that could disqualify them in my position. But what I would do is, with the hypothetical candidates, is look at their stances on intrinsic evils, things you can't reasonably disagree over, and I would pick the one that has the least intrinsic evils. Though for me, many times, and I'd say nearly all the time, I can't imagine it being any other way, the one who is not in favor of ending over 1 million children's lives in our country through abortion probably is the lesser of two evils. So that's the best I can give you, especially when we're only talking about hypothetical candidates. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yes, and when you bring up, it is a simple matter if we were comparing numbers of potential lives lost. War, lots of abortions, eugenics, executions, euthanasia. When it's human lives on the line, I definitely see where you're coming from, absolutely. Do you think that quality of life for a smaller number of people ever comes into the equation? What if we had a totally pro-life person, but they just didn't like journalists and they wanted to lock them up? Do you think the number of locked up journalists ever kind of weighs heavily against the number of abortions that are, that happen in a maybe you might disagree with me calling it a free society, but an open society?
If they're locking up journalists, it really does cease to be free, though it seems that our hypotheticals are dangerously treading into other areas. But I mean, yeah, you could say, well, what do we do in the case of the terrible person who opposes legal abortion? What I would say is, well, let's flip the tables around a bit. And this might actually help, because I think you could see where I'm coming from then. George, is there anything a pro-choice candidate could do that would make you lose your vote? For example, let's say there was a pro-life candidate who wants to make abortion illegal, a pro-choice candidate who wants to keep it legal, but that pro-choice candidate also supports locking up journalists. What do you do in that case?
Oh yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from, because I like doing that. What you do, asking good questions. We got to flip it around, see if it works the other way.
Right.
So I can totally imagine a scenario where someone who, on one subject, I agree with, but I would see that the other, I'd call it a systemic philosophy.
So what would be your gut then for you as a pro-choice person? I've got a pro-choice candidate, but he also does these other bad things. Do you still support them, or do you go and vote for the pro-life person?
Oh, I would definitely have to go with someone who is, if they could maintain the freedom of our society, and the trade-off would be, well, I'm going to put more restrictions on abortion. Maybe one day there won't be any abortions. How they go about that, they could do it in a bad way, they could do it in a destructive way, they could do it in a very constructive way. So I can definitely, go with you on that.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting approach that you would actually, if that for you, something that is worse than abortion being illegal would be threats to freedom of the press and other things like that. So I think that ultimately when it comes down to these cases, what all people will do is they're going to say, well, you elect a candidate, they hold different views, and on issues we can disagree about, and then on issues we cannot reasonably disagree, or intrinsic evils, then you have to sort them. And for me, I would say, well, even though freedom of the press is a very, very important thing, I would still hold that the right to life is the most basic and fundamental right that we have, and that if the right to life is threatened for even a small group, but especially a large group of people, then everyone's right to life is threatened, that we have to secure first people's basic right to live, and then move on to their other basic rights, the right to freedom, the right to associate, the right to marry, and other things like this. So we do need to weigh them, but I think that what's hard, before we have to go to a break here, George, is that since most people, even pro-lifers, aren't used to thinking of the unborn like fellow born human beings, sometimes we drop them in our weight of what intrinsic evils are more pressing because we don't see the unborn on a daily basis, so they get dropped. Whereas if we were 150 years ago voting for slavery versus someone who threatens freedom of the press or voting about things such as whether it should be legal to rape people or not, whether women should have basic rights, I think people can see that we have to look at the most basic rights first, and the most basic of those would be the right to life. And the unborn are just as human as born people. So that's why I think that as we elect leaders, that should take a top priority when we're looking at what they believe. But thank you for calling in, and hopefully we'll hear back from you another time.
Why are you pro-choice is our topic today. We're not looking for pro-life callers, which may seem strange for Catholic Answers Live. We're looking for folks who disagree with the position that the Catholic Church takes, a position that not only the Catholic Church takes, many reasoned people take the position that human life needs to be protected from conception to natural death. That is our position. If you disagree with that position, if you are a pro-choice person, we're very happy to take your call today and discuss it. 888-318-7884 is the number. This is Catholic Answers Live. We'll be right back.
Why are you pro-choice? Call now. Trent is waiting to talk to you.
Hello, my friends. This is Christopher Check, president of Catholic Answers, and I'm challenging you to take the 20 Answers Challenge. Catholic Answers 20 Answers series offers clear arguments so anyone can master defending the fundamentals of our Catholic faith. They also arm the reader to converse intelligently about critical moral and cultural topics facing the Church today, such as abortion, end-of-life issues, and the growth of Islam. Here's how the challenge works. When you purchase the complete set of all 20 books in the series, we will cut the price in half, and we're challenging you to read them all by the end of Lent. What a great preparation for Easter. But wait, there's more. Catholic Answers is going to take $10 from each set purchased and use it to provide materials to our good friends at St. Paul Street Evangelization so they can do what they do best, hit the streets and share the Catholic faith. That's $10 from every set you purchase going to help our fellow workers in the vineyard. You win, St. Paul Street Evangelization wins, the Catholic Church wins. That's a win-win-win. Let's do something great for the kingdom. Call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com now to get your set and begin taking the 20 Answers Challenge today. In fact, why not buy 2 sets and challenge a friend to take the 20 Answers Challenge? That's 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Is it possible to know when life begins? Shouldn't women be able to control their own bodies? What if a pregnant woman's life is in danger? In 20 Answers Abortion, you'll find smart, solid answers to these questions and many more. You'll deepen your understanding of this critical moral issue and gain the knowledge you need to explain it to others. 20 Answers Abortion is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Hello and welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you pro-choice? That is our topic today. 888-318-7884 is the number. I wanted to give a little special greeting to our Chaldean Catholic brothers and sisters today. They're beginning their 3-day mini-season of Ba'utha, a time when Chaldean Catholics fast and pray, imitating the Ninevites who accepted the correction of the prophet Jonah and turned from their sins back to God. That seems kind of appropriate. I mean, I shouldn't be judgmental, but that seems like a good one for today. So special greetings to all our brothers and sisters of the Chaldean Catholic Church. Our topic again, why are you pro-choice? We are live on Facebook, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Periscope, which is associated with Twitter. That's the live feed from Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, you can find us on Periscope. Today, let's go back to the phone. Well, Trent Horn, I should say, apologist here at Catholic Answers, is addressing your questions and concerns today. We'll go to Mark in Portland, Oregon. Mark, you are on with Trent Horn.
Hello there.
Hi.
Yeah, well, the long and the short of it is I'm pro-choice because I don't see the option as being viable.
What option are you speaking of?
Well, what's your option to being pro-choice?
You mean alternative to being pro-choice?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that we we restore the right to life that unborn human beings once had, and so we make it illegal to directly harm them with something like abortion. So that's something that unborn children had for a long time and have in greater extent in many other countries. And because they're human beings, they deserve that legal protection. So I think it is just to restore it. So I guess that would be the alternative to the pro-choice position.
Right. And history has shown us what happens when abortion is illegal.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what have we seen in the past? For example, we had an argument quite a few years ago about whether or not to make abortion illegal. We chose to make it legal. In order
you mean the Supreme Court?
To basically staunch the bleeding, no pun intended, that was occurring in the streets, in the back alleys, in nunneries, in abbots, in religious institutions, all over the world. So the option at that time was to go and have an illegal abortion, or have a legal abortion under the care of a doctor where you can be reasonably certain that the woman is going to be protected and the child, for the most part, will be, if it's a viable child, will be protected.
Wait. I don't see how abortion, even if the child is viable, abortion ends the child's life. The alternative is called childbirth. So for the most part, the child is killed, right?
Wait. So you're referring to a zygote as a child. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying a zygote is a member of the human species, and the term child is a shorthand reference for a very young member of the human species. So a child would be anyone in the zygote, fetal, embryonic, infant, toddler, the stages of life. All of those are children. Yes.
Suggesting they have the same, well, let's use the term value because I think you'd appreciate that. You're suggesting they have the same value as an adult.
I'm saying that all human beings, regardless of their age or their functional ability, have the same basic intrinsic value. That because they are human, they have the same basic right to life, regardless of how old or young they are.
So the mother or the person that is going to be bled out in the back alley is of less value? Is that what you're saying than a zygote?
No, I didn't say that at all. So I'm saying, for example, if someone kills a pregnant woman, if an illegal abortion provider killed a pregnant woman through an illegal abortion, he should be guilty of killing two people because both the woman and child have equal rights. It seems to me, Mark, that the argument you're making is that we should make it legal for bigger people to kill smaller people so that it's safer for the bigger people. Is that the argument you're making?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well, what was wrong with my summary?
No, let me finish, please.
Go ahead.
I'm saying the argument that I'm making is that you have a choice here for an abortion. There's going to be an abortion one way or another. I mean, either it's going to be legal or illegal. So,
well, so Mark, I would agree with you. Mark, I'll find agreement, then you can continue. I agree with you. If abortion is illegal, some people will still choose to have abortions, just as robbing banks and beating spouses is illegal, but people still choose to do it. That doesn't mean it's right or that we should make it legal.
Okay, hold on a second here. You're saying robbing or beating a spouse or robbing a bank is the same? Is it equivalent?
Is the same as abortion?
You're saying there's an equivalent choice there?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that people...
So you're saying my choice to rob a bank or beat my wife is an equivalent choice to a pregnant woman getting an abortion?
I would say to you, it's actually, in many cases, it would not be equivalent because assault or bank robbery doesn't necessarily entail that you will kill somebody, but abortion involves killing a small human being, and killing is worse than hurting people.
Are you suggesting the mother's not aware of that?
Am I suggesting? I think that some women who might choose abortion may be aware of that, others may be unaware of that, but a person's psychological state... Mark, can I finish, please? Yeah. Okay. A person's psychological state or their emotional feeling towards another human being, that does not change whether that human being has a right to life or not. So let me go back to my basic question then for you, because with your argument, tell me this statement if you agree or disagree with it. Should we make it legal for bigger people to kill smaller people because we want to make it safer for the bigger people? Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's nothing to do with the argument. I don't understand.
Okay, so what is abortion? So abortion is a mother who would be, or the abortion provider in this case, who's doing the abortion, is the bigger person. The adult, the grown-up, is going to end the life of the child, who is the smaller person. So bigger person ends the life of smaller person.
Right.
And you are saying it should be legal to do that so that it is safer for the bigger person involved.
No, what I'm saying is that your choice, what you're suggesting, is that we go back to the 1930s or the 20s or the 16th century or 15th century or pick a period where these occurrences are going to occur. Women are going to get pregnant. Men are going to pay for prostitution. People are going to do drugs.
Are people going to murder each other? Mark? Are people still going to murder each other even though murder is illegal?
Yes, of course they will. But what you're suggesting is that we put our rules back into a position where the choice is now not whether or not I have an abortion or not whether or not it is whether or not this woman can go on to a normal life afterwards and, you know, possibly have a child in wedlock or however it works out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not giving her that choice. What you're saying is that now all of a sudden this is completely illegal. You're going to go and be butchered by somebody in a back alley somewhere because that is the option.
Why can't they choose to give birth to the child?
But they won't. We know they won't.
Is every woman not going to do that?
The suggestion you're giving us is that we should go back to the 16th century. And that's completely unreasonable.
So back when all human beings...
The Catholic Church is famous for changing its mind on things when all of a sudden there's no other option.
Okay,
and
Mark, we're not talking about the Catholic Church. We're not talking about things like that. What we're talking about is which human beings should have the right to life. And so you've tried to talk around it, but ultimately your position is saying that, well, if a bigger person's going to hurt a smaller person, if crime's going to happen, we should make it legal so it's safer for the criminal. That's a barbaric way to look at things. People can choose to not have abortions. They can choose life, and we should promote that in a civilized society.
We'll be right back on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Hey everyone, this is Carlo Broussard. I've got a challenge for you. It's called the 20 Answers Challenge. Catholic Answers 20 Answers series offers hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the church and the world. Here's how the challenge works. When you purchase the sampler of all 20 books in the series, we're going to knock the price in half. And we're challenging you to finish them all this Lent and Easter season. Then, we're going to take $10 from each set purchased and provide materials to our friends at St. Paul Street Evangelization so they can do what they do best: hit the streets and share the Catholic faith. That's $10 from every set you purchase, going to help our fellow workers in the vineyard. You win, St. Paul Street Evangelization wins, the Catholic Church wins. That's a win-win-win. Together, we can be a part of something great. Call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com now to get your set and begin taking the 20 Answers Challenge today.
What does it mean to say that Scripture is inspired? Why don't Catholics believe that the Bible is the sole rule of faith? Do Christians have to follow all the strange and archaic laws found in the Old Testament? 20 Answers the Bible offers a truly Catholic perspective on Scripture, showing how it harmonizes with God's revelation in sacred tradition and with the teaching authority of the Church. 20 Answers the Bible is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com today and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. So happy to have you here with us today. 888-318-7884 is the number. Our topic, why are you pro-choice? Trent Horn is taking your questions. And Trent, before we went to the break, you were addressing the question of whether the fact that you have safer methods of abortion is a good idea because it allows big people essentially to more safely attack small people.
Yeah,
Am I about right on that?
Yeah, well, the argument Mark was putting forward was that, well, abortion's going to happen anyways, so let's make it safe. And, and actually, I would be completely in favor of legal abortion. I would be totally in favor of abortion if abortion were as safe for the child as it currently is for the mother. You see what I mean by that?
I see. I'm actually a little bit stunned by that. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
If it is as safe for the child as it is for the mother, then I would be totally in favor of it. But the problem is, abortion procedures, 50% of the people involved die. That's too high of a fatality rate to say that abortion is safe. And now Mark and I went back and forth, well, can you say a zygote is a child or not? And that actually got to the root of our issue. And he simply presented no evidence to show that they aren't. It was just simply an incredulous rhetorical question. And that's just an assertion, which can be dismissed because it has no evidence behind it. But I thought there was a point he made I wanted to tie up on before we moved on, that he said that rhetorical flirt, you just want to go back to the 16th century. Yep. You just want to go back into the past, as if, but actually, it is he and others who support legal abortion with these pragmatic arguments that want to go back to the 16th century, when, for example, the Atlantic slave trade was justified by saying, well, this is better for everyone, and people are going to do this anyways, and without the law behind them, they could be hurt or killed. So throughout history, people have tried to justify crimes against innocent people, like the Nazis, for example. The Nazis didn't just say, well, let's just kill everybody, we have no reason behind it. They gave propagandistic arguments to people always think, it's funny, they think, well, I would have never done that. I would have never. I would have fought the Nazis. I would have never. You don't understand that the people there, they were not taken advantage of, but they were given reasons that many of them said, well, yeah, these Jews might have been sympathizing with the communists and they'll invade and destabilize our country. And they were told all of these things that people, to kill other human beings, they need to dehumanize the human beings, right, and then rationalize the killing. And that's what happens to abortion. So when I say I want to restore the right to life of the unborn, I'm not going back to barbarisms of the past. Rather, it is those who are in favor of legal abortion who want to go back to the barbaric practice of crafting the law so it protects bigger, stronger, more powerful people and exploits weaker, defenseless people, and even says that they're not really people. So something else to consider when this is brought up. So when people bring up, well, abortion should be legal so that it's safe, I want to immediately respond, safe for who, the mother or the child? And that gets us back to the central issue.
And isn't the basic kind of trend of the modern period, when considered rightly, a trend towards including more and more people under the protections of the law, not fewer and fewer? So if you're going to go with the trend of, well, for example, women gaining the vote, or racial laws being overthrown, racist laws basically being overthrown, more and more people are supposed to be welcomed in. We're not supposed to say fewer and fewer.
Yeah, I would say that we do no harm when we expand the human community to include our fellow human beings.
Yes.
So that is progress, true progress, to understand that all people are treated equally and understood for who they are, what their genuine and authentic identity is. And their identity doesn't come from their functional abilities, it comes from their humanity. And that's what it means to say, well, we treat people in a humane way, is to say, well, we recognize their humanity. It's funny, we even say, well, the American Humane Society treats animals well. And people can distort that, say, well, no, animals are not people, but the reason we treat them well is because we are people. And we understand that you ought not cause suffering or harm without a good reason.
Yep.
And whereas in the animal kingdom, there is no animal humane society. They just steal from one another, forcibly copulate, and eat each other. But
Or
humans,
us. Sometimes they eat us.
Or us, yeah.
I find that rude. I find that extremely
Well,
rude.
it's so hard. You've got like the environmentalists out there, and just like we've got to save these endangered species. And look at and he falls overboard, and the great white shark gets him. He's like, I've done so much for you. How ungrateful are you? But that's because, that's not an argument to say animals don't matter. We should be cruel to animals. It's simply saying that humans have intrinsic moral dignity, and they have intrinsic moral rights. And we ought to recognize that dignity in every human being, and we ought to exhort humans to act in moral ways with one another and with any other part of God's creation.
888-318-7884 is the number. We go to Anonymous calling from Canada. Anonymous, you are on with Trent Horn. Why are you pro-choice?
Hi there. I'm pro-choice because of the bodily rights argument. The bodily rights argument basically, to me, says that no one has a right to another person's body without their consent. And what I like about this argument is it kind of simplifies things, gets away from whether or not a fetus is a person and all that. It doesn't really matter to the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it also exposes the idea that abortion is murder as being false.
Right, well, because you're saying murder would be unlawful killing, but this is not unlawful or malicious killing. That when you say right to refuse, Anonymous, do you mean that, well, just as if I'm in the hospital, or if you're in the hospital and you need my kidney, and I don't give you my kidney, and you die, I didn't murder you?
Right.
Okay.
I think we would all agree with that.
Yes.
And it even goes beyond, even if I was in the hospital and I needed a kidney, and another person had just died, but has not yet given consent to organ donation, I still couldn't take someone's kidney, even though they're no longer living.
But suppose, let me change the example a little bit for you. Suppose you are in the hospital, you need a kidney, and I give you my kidney, and you're living, and I say, you have no right to use my kidney, so I'm going to take it back. And when I take it back, that kills you. I think that is closer to abortion, because abortion is not merely choosing to not donate a body to help someone who's dying. It's causing someone to be dependent on you and then taking away their only source of life. So I think the example is not parallel to pregnancy. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, I see where you're going, but I don't agree. Even by causing someone to require a kidney or something, right? I think you still don't have a right to take to somebody else's body. So, for example, we all get in our cars, right, and drive around, knowing full well that we could get in an accident and potentially injure someone. We might even cause the accident and cause someone to require some kind of donation, or they might die. It still gives that no right to that person to take somebody else's organs.
And I see what you're saying, Anonymous, but I would argue the difference here is that there is no intrinsic connection of responsibility between driving a car and donating my body to save another person's life, even if I cause an accident where they need my blood or they need my kidney to live. I haven't done anything or entered into anything where I'm morally obligated to help them. That driving a car has no connection to providing my body to aid another person. Whereas having sexual intercourse, I think it clearly has an intrinsic connection to providing an unborn child with your body for two reasons. One, kidneys or my blood, it's very clear they are for my body. But when you look at like the uterus, we would say, well, what is the uterus for? Well, clearly it's for the life of a child. And then second, moving on from that, let's see. Well, I had the train of thought that I was going with that. That there's no intrinsic. Oh, here was the connection. To show the connection between sex and pregnancy, do you see it's compelling that many people refer to sex euphemistically as making babies?
Yes. Yeah.
But we don't refer to driving a car euphemistically as hooking myself up to someone or donating blood. But we do see that connection between sex and pregnancy.
Well, there are many euphemisms for sex that we could talk about.
That's just what I'm just saying here, that when two people engage in an act that is ordered towards creating a helpless human being, don't they have a responsibility to that human being? So, for example, that's why we say that's why we say fathers have to provide child support, for example.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying, and I fundamentally disagree.
With what?
Well, just the notion that sex is only ever, at least in part, for procreation.
That wasn't my argument. I'm not saying it's only for that. I'm saying it's ordered towards that. In the same way that eating chocolate cake is ordered towards gaining calories, but obviously many people eat chocolate cake not to gain calories. They enjoy the flavor, may eat in spite of what happens, but there's clearly a connection between the two at its primary level. And I would say that there's that similar connection between sex and pregnancy, much to the effect that when people have sex and they're unable to cause pregnancy, we say that they are sick or they're infertile, and so they have a medical problem. So I think that puts it more towards the side that I'm making.
Well, yeah, again, I disagree that sex is ordered specifically for that.
What is sex ordered towards? What is it for?
Well, it's for many things.
What would you say at its most fundamental level it's ordered towards?
Intimacy.
So there's nothing.
Bond.
So there would be nothing wrong than having sexual union with, let's say, an animal or a close family member, since ultimately it's just about intimacy and bonds.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't say that.
Well, I guess for me that if sexual union at its fundamental level is just about intimacy and bonds, is there ever people you should not be?
I didn't say it was just for that.
Okay. So
yeah.
But I'm talking about what's its most fundamental purpose for.
Yeah, that would I agree. But it's not. Here's the thing, though. It's not for me to say what it is for in other people's relationships.
Yeah, we can take a step back from that, because I think you and I agree when people have sex, many times the regular rule is it creates human beings, it creates children. Do those parents have obligations to those human beings they create?
Yes, they do, but those obligations do not include organ donation, or their kids do not have a right to take or use their parents' body.
Okay, so when that child they create is unborn or fetal, you said that they do have obligations to them, just not organ donation. What would be those obligations they do have?
Sorry, I thought you were talking about a live child.
Yes, a living one in the womb that they create.
What obligation would they have?
Do they have any obligations to that child? That they engage in sex, the child comes into existence, they live in the womb, naturally ordered for them to live in. Do they have any obligations to that human being they have created?
Well, they may not even know that they have the child in the womb.
Well, let's say they do know that. Other people don't go get abortions unless they know they have created they've created something.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing before we have to go to a break, do they have any obligations at all? Because it seems to me your position is two people can engage in an act that creates a human being, and yet they have no obligations to care for that human being. That seems odd to me.
It may be the fact that they do have a moral obligation in that they would refrain from smoking, refrain from drinking, and so on. But I think it would be hard to put a legal obligation on that.
Would they have a moral? If they have a moral obligation to not hurt a child with smoking or drinking, could they at least have a moral obligation to not hurt the child with abortion?
Yeah. So I don't see abortion as the objective as hurting the child. I see it as a right to refuse their bodily organs.
Well, but isn't that similar then to a born woman has a 2-month-old that she refuses to breastfeed at home and she leaves in the crib? Is she starving the child, or is she just refusing to let the child use her body?
Well, she would have an obligation to feed the child, but she wouldn't have to feed it breast milk. She could feed it formula.
Let's say all that she had. Let's say she's a very poor woman in a rural area. All she has is her own breast milk. Does she then now have an obligation to sustain that child with her body?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. We're getting pretty far afield from the from how abortion is used, in most cases, though.
Okay, well, but unfortunately, we'll have to go to a break here. We went longer with this one, but I think actually we're not far afield. That we started with the bodily rights argument, and now we've ended with a case with a born individual, a breastfeeding woman, who that is the only way she can care for a 2-month-old, that if she were to refuse to let the child have access to her body, we wouldn't call that a moral right to refuse. We would call it an immoral act of starvation. And I would say abortion is the same thing. It's not merely refusing to let a child use an organ like a kidney. It is evicting a child, causing their death in a violent way from the organ designed to sustain them, that the obligations from the parents who the child has been entrusted to, that the mother and father who have obligations to the child, are unjustly causing the child's death, not merely refusing to provide care to a stranger or things like that. So I would recommend, though, if you want to learn more about my take on this argument, in Chapter 8 of my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, I have a whole treatment of bodily rights arguments, including the specific right to refuse argument. But thank you for calling in. Maybe we'll hear back from you another time.
Thanks, Anonymous. Why are you pro-choice? That's our topic today on Catholic Answers Live. 888-318-7884 is the number. Taking your questions is Trent Horn. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and we will be right back.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In Mark 6:53, as soon as Jesus and his disciples landed at Gennesaret and left the boat, people began to bring the sick to him on mats. Whatever villages he entered, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged that they might only touch the tassel of his cloak. The combination of faith and humility always brought miracles, and it still does. In a culture of cynicism and arrogance, such virtues are so often nowhere to be found until we hurt. On September 11, 2001, concerns over the separation of church and state and political correctness were not in evidence on the streets of New York City when religious pictures and vigil lights lined so many sidewalks. For a time, America was humbled and began to walk with the Lord. We've drifted again. It's time for America to once again embrace the cross. As always, it remains our only hope. I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Tomorrow, open forum. Any question on any topic having to do with religion, with the Catholic faith, with the philosophy of religion, more than welcome tomorrow. Today, we are welcoming questions. No, really, we're welcoming answers to the question, why are you pro-choice? Taking your comments and questions is Trent Horn, apologist here at Catholic Answers Live. And we go to John in Boston, Massachusetts. John, you're on with Trent Horn.
Gentlemen, yes. Hello, I'm more than pro-choice. I consider myself pro-abortion. You know, you could almost say pro-death, because pro-life is the opposite, But it was the Pope, John Paul II, I believe, who said abortion was a Holocaust. You heard that. You remember that, right? And you mentioned the Holocaust multiple times in the past hour with the Nazis. So I've noticed since Roe v. Wade, 73, where there was no referendum or plebiscite for the American people to vote on abortion, I think if there had been, they would never have allowed it. I think it would have been voted down. That not only this whole false idea of women's right to choose, but really what is going on here, it seems to me, my whole life, I've been watching this since 73, is a real racial demographic change in America that Bill Clinton liked to talk about 25 years ago as president, that there was something going on. We see how 44 years of abortion in America, 1.5 million a year, is over 60 million Americans wiped out, a whole generation.
So, John, we need you to get to the point. Why are you pro-choice?
The reason I'm pro-choice is because you take the word Gentile. I always grew up as a Christian, a Roman Catholic, considered myself a Gentile. I thought it just meant Christian, someone who was non-Jewish, a Gentile. But actually in the Paleo-Hebraic, original Hebrew, it means enemy. Like the word Apache, Indian, means enemy to everybody, and the word Gentile means enemy. So I'm considered the enemy. Now, Jesus...
Well, hang on, John. John, I need you to give me one sentence now. I'm sorry, but I'm just not following. I need you to give me one sentence. You are pro-choice because?
Because my enemies want to destroy me. I'll just say this. I was listening to the great Paul Krugman, writes for the New York Times, a great economist, great American, great Zionist. He has books in the library. He's a Nobel laureate. He looks like a rabbi with a long beard when he has that going on. He was on TV recently, a month or so ago, saying, they asked him, what do you think of the extermination, from the Latin to drive away, drive out, or destroy, destruction of the Euro-Americans, meaning the white race in America? He said, good, that's good.
John, wait, you said your enemies. Who are specifically your enemies?
Yeah, Jesus had enemies. He went after...
John, who are your enemies you're talking about?
I'm talking about the same ones that Jesus went after. He picked up a weapon. The Prince of Peace, the Lamb of God, picks up a weapon to go after...
John, do you think the Jews are your enemy?
I say that Jesus, if you read 1,000 chapters in the Bible, I know Catholics...
Okay, John, this is kind of weird to me, because normally if I ask someone like Cy, are the Jews your enemy? I could get a pretty easy yes or no answer. It's going to be no.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get to answer it. No, I really want to answer that one, Trent. Don't just go by. Don't gloss that.
Don't go on and on about all this. So you know what? No, I'm not going to entertain this anymore, John. I appreciate that you called in, and I'm happy to discuss with you the issue of abortion. But from somebody who half their family is Jewish, whose grandfather changed his name because he was beaten up in the Navy for being a Jew, I'm not going to entertain hatred and anti-Semitism on this show.
Thanks, Trent. I think you picked up on it quicker than I did, but thanks,
no,
Trent. I think you're exactly right.
I'm not going to do that. So you're welcome to come back, and I want to have a conversation. And I don't think we're going to be able, about this subject or others. But you know what? It's so unfortunate we live in a world where unborn children, their humanity is doubted and denied, and I have to fight for that. I am grateful at least that Jewish people and other marginalized people, while there are people who still deny their humanity, who knows, maybe that was part of this call, I don't know, they're not being exterminated as they were 60 years ago, and the unborn are being exterminated. So I'm not going to entertain that. Just not going to. On this show, I want to talk about abortion because you know what? The unborn are losing their lives at a systematic rate. And the only way we're going to change that is by having concrete dialogue about this to change hearts and minds. But you know what? We have reached a consensus, at least in most of the Western world and the civilized world, at least when it comes to nearly all born people. And I'm not going to entertain a conversation right now about that threatens to roll that back. So I wish you well, and I pray that your heart will change what you think towards the Jewish people, that Paul in Romans 11 says even Israel will be saved, that there is still a place for the Jewish people in God's plan of salvation because God loves everyone, and Jesus did not say the Jews are his enemies. Jesus came to die for both Jews and Gentiles. Gentile does not mean enemy. It just means non-Jew. It's not even a Hebrew word. It comes from a French derivation of a Latin word. It's just a descriptor for those who are not Jewish, that we believe in a God who loves everyone, Jew or Gentile, born or unborn. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Amen, brother. I'll tell you what, I don't think we have time to go to another caller. I want to ask you something, Trent. Do you ever hear the argument? It's kind of, it may be related to that argument we were just hearing, but it's kind of almost an economic or social argument that I feel like people are ashamed to say it, but they carry it in their hearts, which is that, well, those who are being aborted, you look, the crime rate's going way down. I have actually heard that argument, Trent.
That argument, well, we need abortion to deal with crime and issues like this. That actually was popularized in a book called Freakonomics.
Right.
And the book wasn't about abortion. It was just about the unintended consequences of economics. And they said, well, abortion was made legal in 1973, and then 18 years later in the 90s, crime starts dropping because people aborted these unwanted children who would have grown up to be criminals. Two problems with that. One, that argument from Freakonomics has been challenged as being correlation but not causation. That in the 90s, what's more likely is better police techniques, better law enforcement techniques drop the crime rate, not abortion. And number two, even if you could kill a group of people to reduce crime or poverty rates, well, you should not kill a group of people to do that. That's a case where the solution is worse than the problem you're trying to solve. No, we should respect people's intrinsic rights and values and not kill them to try to improve quality of life for others.
Thank you so much, Trent Horn, for making that point so articulately, repeatedly, and convincingly today on Catholic Answers Live. Tomorrow, open forum on Catholic Answers Live. Any question you've got on any aspect of Catholic life or faith. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We'll see you again tomorrow on Catholic Answers Live.